Well, welcome back. We've got another great afternoon session for you, and I'm actually excited because I get to introduce myself, I guess, first of all. So I know earlier we talked about this sort of doing a guest stint in here. My day job is actually as a senior marketing specialist at OpenTable. And as part of that, I wanted to share some insights with you all from our most recent Diner Insight survey. So if we can pull up that PowerPoint, and actually if I can grab it on the confidence monitor as well, that would be awesome. Did anybody here already know that OpenTable does a quarterly Diner Insight survey? Oh, a few of you, great, but tons of you who didn't, so I'm so glad to be able to bring this to you. So we do a quarterly Diner Insight survey where we're surveying over 20,000 diners in the US and Canada, and we're asking them really pertinent questions about how they're thinking about dining, how they're thinking about eating out, and because it's quarterly, we're able to kind of hear how they're changing over the course of the year, and how their views towards the same topics are kind of changing and evolving. So the big takeaway, the great big takeaway is that dining is back. Based on our surveys and what we're hearing from our diners is that demand is at an all-time high and people really want to be back in restaurants. In our most recent survey, which I should say actually was just published on Monday and is now publicly available, in that most recent survey, 59% said that they're dining out at least once a week, which I think is great numbers to see compared to where we have been in this past year, obviously. This number is slightly down in our Q3 survey. That number was actually at 62%, so we did see a bit of a drop due to Delta variant, but not by too much, still really strong. The other thing is that diners are really looking forward to the holidays and celebrating in the holidays. I don't have this stat up here, but 53% said they're planning to dine out to celebrate 5 or more times for the coming holidays. So I feel like that's, again, just another strong stat for the demand for dining. That said, this is what diners are telling us they want to do. This is what they're kind of intending to do, but what actually happens, right? Are we actually seeing this reflected in the restaurants and people coming into the businesses? So we've established this State of the Industry Hub, which is freely available. Anybody can go to it, and this presentation will be shared with you afterwards. It's also in the app and it's linked here, but it'll show you seated diners from online, phone, and walk-in reservations, and you can drill down for your specific region or sort of manipulate the data however you want to kind of see if that's coming true for you in your markets. So this is probably no surprise. Early on in the year, actually even late last year, Q4 of 2020, health and safety measures were most important for diners. 43%, which was the highest number of diners, said health and safety measures were most important, followed by food, and good food being what they use to choose a restaurant. We actually saw that flip in Q1 of this year with it going down to 34% saying health and safety measures are most important. And then in Q3, 77% of diners said menu is the most important factor for them in choosing a restaurant. So we're definitely seeing that health and safety is no longer totally the top concern, but that's not to say that they're not still concerned about health and safety. They do care about proof of vaccination. I think what's interesting here is that you'll see the Q1 numbers, 25% thought that requiring staff to be vaccinated was a must. Early, obviously, Q1, vaccines weren't as widely available. I think as vaccines have become more widely available, diners have felt that it is more and more important for the staff in those establishments to be vaccinated. That said, there are some innovations that have happened in the past year in the pandemic, and we asked diners what they'd like to see. What I think is interesting in this slide is that you see these numbers going up from Q2 to Q4 on the same subject. So delivery and takeout, Yes, they want it, and they are continuing to want it to stay even more. Same with outdoor seating, same with contactless. What I don't have listed on this slide is the things that they don't want, which are deposits for reservations, as well as restaurants being only reservations only. Diners want that flexibility to kind of decide on the fly to walk into a restaurant and that you'll have a table for them, that they didn't have to make a reservation in advance. I feel like I flew through that, and I think I did, but you can download all of these surveys. Q4, I referenced some of the latest numbers from our Q4 survey, as well as the previous ones, all at this link. And again, it is linked in the PowerPoint that will be shared with you. So thank you for giving me a little bit of time to talk about those diner insights. And now we're going back to our little travels around the world, or travels around Latin America. And this time we're going to be taking a multi-sensory visit to Mexico City with Chef Gabby Ruiz. Chef Gabby has a really interesting condition, which she is going to talk about a little bit more. But has anybody heard of synesthesia before? A few nods, okay. Again, Gabby is going to talk about it a little bit more, but it's basically where your senses get kind of mixed up. Where I say mixed up, that sounds like it's a bad thing, but it can be a really great thing, where maybe you see sounds, or you hear colors, or you feel a taste, and it's become a really interesting way that Chef Gabby has brought into her cooking. So we're gonna have a video from Chef Gabby first, and then she's gonna join us live. So let's take a look at her video.
I even thought it was a part of my imagination. Many years later, on an appointment to a neurologist, I was diagnosed with synesthesia. From that moment, the confidence that I had lost returned. But what synesthesia means? Synesthesia is a neural condition in which you perceive with a sense that does not correspond. All human beings at birth, we have all neurons connected to each other, and after 6 months, there is a neural pruning where the senses are defined. Having some people where this does not happen, some senses being interconnected. There are different types of synesthesia. For example, there are people who, when hearing a word, see a color. Some others, when they perceive a smell, feel a texture. And I have a picture of an example of that. If you can show me the picture, please.
Gabby, do you have it on your computer to share, or we can maybe bring it up if not?
I can keep going if you have. I think you have the presentation with you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and we'll try to bring it up on our side also.
Okay, perfect. In mine, I can explain the exercise if you want. It's easy. Let's imagine something. Let's imagine we have a cloud. There you go. There's a presentation. So can you go to the other one, please? And then to the other one. There you go. So we have two shapes. We have one star and then one kind of cloud. And I have two names. I have Buba and I have Kiki. Which one is which one? That's an exercise for you to understand what synesthesia means. I don't know if somebody can answer. If you can't, I can do the exercise for you guys. So the star is Kiki and the cloud is Buba. And that's what I meant. So in mine, in which the sense of hearing is connected with a taste. So I taste sounds. But before I consider a defect became an opportunity to apply in my career, I managed to join my two passions, music and gastronomy. That's how I started cooking songs. I was looking for artists and offered to cook their songs. This experience made their heads blown away and mine as well. This represented a 24-hour job. So I felt the need to create a work structure that would make the creative process easier. First, I divided the song in two feelings, sadness and happiness. And I assigned a flavor palette to each one. In music, the major tones make you feel optimism and joy. And talking about flavors, citrus is seafood, fresh chilies, tropical fruits, light beer, and white wine. The minor tones in the music express nostalgia and melancholy. In flavors, they are spices, game animals, berries, mushrooms, that's dark beer, and red wine. During the process, and living all this experience, I wanted to go further. So I developed a symbology with signs that signified a flavor, placed them together with the lyrics. So the songs, and thus it became a gustatory sheet. Here I have the images. I have dish, and I have the gustatory sheet on the other side. And let me explain with the other images. Yes, that's the one I was talking about. Yeah, we have this song that is called Morena Mia from one Spain artist from Spain, Miguel Bosé, and we have all the lyrics. And at the top we have some shapes. At the end of the sheet, we have the meaning of each shape. So in that case, the artist read the flavors instead of the tones. So we made our own gustatory sheet. That's how we call them. Okay, so I have another video for you with this with this song, please. Can we put the next video, please?
Gabby, I'm intrigued to know, do you know other chefs or other people, I guess, that taste sound the way that you do?
Yes, there is one scientific that I met few years ago. His name is, he's from the United Kingdom. And his name is James Wannerton, and he is the president of the Association of United Kingdom of Synesthesia, and he has the same condition as I do. It's one of the most like I don't know how to say it, but like it's the most weirdest, if I can say
It's
weird.
the rarest, probably. It's the
rarest.
The
Yes,
rarest.
the rarest. Yes. Yes.
And does he use that in a culinary way like you do, or is it just sort of that's how he goes through the world?
He doesn't know how, and he doesn't like to cook. So yeah, one time we were like trying to cook something, and he was like, "Gabby, please." But yeah, he doesn't cook at all. So I don't know any people that cook songs. Well, I would love to.
Yeah, so I guess that's a call out for any of you chefs and connected people in the world. If you also hear of somebody who does this the way that Gabby does, Gabby would love to connect. Gabby, we've got one more minute here, but I'm wondering, we got to see a little bit how you've brought this to life. What are you working on next, or what is sort of the next expression of this for you?
Well, we keep cooking songs, and I'm starting to go further with the artists. So I'm starting to make some collaboration with artists from United States and then Germany, and so it's getting bigger, and I'm so happy for that because I never thought it was going to end this way, you know.
That is amazing, and we should say actually that Gabby was kind enough to join us. She's in the middle of an event and maybe in the middle of dinner service right now at this event, but she was able to step away. So thank you again so much, Gabby, for joining us and for sharing this unique story with us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening.
All right, and now to close out day 2 of Worlds of Flavor, we have a really, I kind of think of it as a sort of a homegrown session in a way, because we've got Chicago, we've got all the Chicagoans. Is that a reasonable term? Is that Sure, yeah. I went to school in Chicago, but I don't know the terms. Chicago, we've got a trio of Chicagoans here to tell us what makes their city and their cuisine special, and to guide us through that journey is Chandra yet again, so please help me welcome her.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you so much, everyone. So I want to give a quick intro to Chicago to you all. So a less astute audience, we'll say that, we wouldn't be too far off to guess that they hear, okay, here's some Chicago people. So you guys eat, half of the people would say, okay, so you guys are eating like hot dogs and deep dish pizza, and the only restaurants you go to are steakhouses. And then the other half, maybe more restaurant-minded, might be like, oh, so do you go to Alinea like every week? And you know, it is true that Chicago, it's so interesting because Chicago for so many years, the chefs, I think, chafed under this idea that we were this meat and potatoes town because there's so much more to the city than a chain steakhouse, for example. But it's also interesting that in the years since Charlie Trotter and Grant Achatz and so many chefs who've trained in their kitchens have opened these ultra fine dining restaurants with 20-course tasting menus, have established it as like this North American hub for a very modern style of cooking. So you've got this dichotomy between the two. And the thing is, of course, neither one of those is accurate. You know, those might be the most prevalent misconceptions about eating in Chicago, but they're just good examples of how inaccurate it is to paint Chicago or any city with any kind of broad culinary strokes. You know, Seattle, there is so much more than just smoked salmon. Philadelphia is more than cheesecake. Cincinnati has a lot more to offer than chili. And of course, I mean, if you're going to say those, you know, make assumptions about cities, then what are you going to do? Go to New York and be like, oh, so you guys just eat bagels all day? I mean, those ideas become, if you're really thinking about restaurant scenes and wanting to understand the cities, they become really, frankly, very lazy ideas. Although, I mean, I do assume that we're all going to go drink wine tonight, but like we do that in Chicago too. So a couple of things to know about Chicago. Chicago, within the city limits, before you get to the suburbs, Chicago is home to just under 3 million people, making it the 5th largest city in the country, one of the most diverse. The city is made up of roughly 200 different neighborhoods, many of which are known for the immigrant communities that originally settled en masse in those neighborhoods, which is both good and bad, because it's wonderful to have Devon Street, an Indian district where you can go and buy Indian groceries and go to a snack shop and go to a sweet shop and then buy saris and buy housewares and have all that together and feel like you're immersing yourself in the culture. But the flip side is that it does contribute to the city being fairly segregated. So we do work to try and pull things out of out of those neighborhoods. I think it's important to know that Chicago is home to the world's 2nd largest Polish population outside of Warsaw. It means that a few apartments ago, I could go to the corner store and get the Chicago Tribune in Polish if I wanted to. It's also a hub for the Mexican community, and even coming directly from Mexico, in particular Mexico City, but after immigration was largely reduced in the 20s, internal immigration from the Southwest to Chicago was huge. Those of us who are from the South call Chicago the northernmost southern city, due in large part to the Great Migration. This is a time when approximately 500,000 Black Southerners moved north and that's 500,000 between 1916 and 1919, and twice as many in the decade that followed. Chicago alone immediately became home to 50 to 75,000 Black newcomers who took jobs in the railroad yards, in the steel mills, packing houses, other industries, and taking advantage of being able to create a new life there. That movement continued through the 70s, and is credited for shifting the center of gravity of African American culture from the rural South to the urban North. So but there are so many different neighborhoods. There's Lincoln Square, which was originally a German neighborhood, but is now kind of German, but there's a big Korean district and a Lebanese district right butting up next to it. There's Andersonville, which is home to which was known for its Swedish restaurants and pastries and shops and art. There's Pilsen, that was originally home to the Mexican community, Ukrainian Village. All of these different neighborhoods. And the great thing that has happened is that we've had chefs come from these different neighborhoods and come from these different cultures and say, okay, I'm in the middle of the United States, I'm surrounded by all these different cultures, I'm going to mix it up. So that means we have restaurants like Kimski, where you can get Polish Korean food. So if you can imagine where a pierogi and a mandu come together, or where the chef will take the ideas from kimchi and sauerkraut and meld those together. We'll have a restaurant like Polombia, which is Polish Colombian, and they offer something called an pierogi, which is it's a hybrid between an empanada and a pierogi, and stuffed with Colombian braised short ribs, onions, potato. Sounds fantastic, doesn't matter, doesn't need its own designation. I have not yet been to another restaurant called Sunset Pho that is Croatian Vietnamese, which isn't a combination that I think anyone kind of saw coming, but it's one of the great things about Chicago. So I'm thrilled to have two Chicago chefs joining us to help expand our understanding of the city and its food. First up is my dear friend, Erick Williams. Erick is the chef owner of Virtue Restaurant, located in Chicago's Hyde Park neighborhood. This restaurant is where he unites his fine dining expertise, his love of Southern cuisine, particularly as it can be found in the Midwest via the Great Migration, and his insatiable study of history and art as they relate to food culture. So please join me in welcoming Erick Williams.
Greetings. So I'm a savory chef, and for many of you, you may not understand what that means, but what it means is pastry chefs are very, very good at following instructions, and savory chefs aren't. So we like to ad-lib, we like to change it up a little bit, and so I'm going to engage you guys a little bit to start this out. Over the past few days, I've been very, very humbled by the amount of people who are volunteering for this thing to be what it is, and for all of us to receive all of the comfort and all of the information that we've been able to get. And so you guys can't see everyone that's working because many of them are behind curtains and walls, kind of like the Wiz. So what I'd like for you to do is just take 1 second of your time and give a loud round of applause for the people who are working for all of us to enjoy. You guys can all be pastry chefs. So I came over by way of Chicago, which Chandra did a very, very terrific job of introducing. And what we're going to do today is sweet potato soup. And the reason why I elected to pick soup as a course, because it has great historical context. When we think back to the poorest times in our country, all the way to the most sophisticated meals, soup has always been a staple. I've heard many, many times from both young people and those that are way into their prime that they can't boil water. And I don't believe that as a chef. I think that's a fallacy. I think part of what many of us struggle with is this idea that things that are simple can be great. And so this is a very, very simple soup that happens to have some robust and or complex layers. So what I've just added to the pan is a little bit of oil. This soup is interesting because it has a lot of flavor. Tried to trick me. It has a lot of flavor, but it has no animal protein in it at all. And I actually love eating meat, fish, dairy, and every part of things that grow and are available to me. And I cook that way most often. But in this particular case, this happens to be one of my favorite soups because it has none of the things mentioned. So I'm going to add a little bit of onion. And we are going to sweat this onion. One of the other beauties of this soup is the idea that it's quick. And for many of us that work long hours, doing all sorts of things, the truth is we love to have items that are satiating, that hit the spot, that have some complexity, but that don't take all day. Yams are most often found in African markets and Asian markets. They happen to be a staple in their ingredient base. Sweet potatoes happen to be confused with yams in the Americas. They usually have an orange flesh. And then there are also some Japanese varietals. And the reason I'm bringing them all up is because they all work. So the CIA was kind enough to prep many of the items as I was flying in. And as every chef would require, we just want the freshest ingredients that we can possibly get. And so in this case, what I have are white yams that are slightly yet less colorful and slightly less sweet than our traditional sweet potatoes. So for those of you that had the opportunity to taste this earlier for lunch, I hope you enjoyed it. So we start by sweating our onions, and then we add a very, very dominant ingredient, being ginger, and the other being a little bit of garlic. I came in yesterday and did a little bit of investigating as the other chefs were preparing, and I was very, very glad that I chose a recipe that had garlic in it, because as a young chef, when I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and I had to prepare meals in people's homes, I would almost always bring a little bit of garlic and just gently sweat it in their home so that once they arrived, it smelled like I was really cooking up a storm. Let me just tell you, it helped make a way of life for me for some time. So the oil that I added early on can easily be substituted for butter. Sometimes I do substitute it for butter, but then it takes me in a little bit of a different direction. And what I really, really love about this soup, outside of its African roots and its complexity in the aromatics, and even how quick it cooks, is this idea that it's rich, but it's rich and healthy at the same time. So I just add the potatoes. I'm going to add a little bit of water. And then we would generally let that come to a simmer and cook until the vegetables are completely falling apart. I add a little bit of jalapenos that have been seeded. And if you need a little bit more spice in your life, I'll tell you how to do that as well. So from that space, we let that come to a simmer. And I'm going to encourage Chandra to jump in the middle of this. I could walk through it because we have some things pre-prepared, but I like to get a little closer to cooking than just faking it. Do you have any questions?
You know, I would love for you to tell everyone about Virtue. Tell us about the restaurant and your intention with it.
So Virtue is an American Southern restaurant that resides on the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood called Hyde Park. Hyde Park is a historic neighborhood that wasn't always a Chicago neighborhood. At one point, it was its own township. Things that people would recognize adjacent to Hyde Park are the Museum of Science Industry in Chicago, the Smart Museum, and the University of Chicago resides as one of the largest employers, private employers in the city in Hyde Park. And so Virtue sets out to create space that shows the best of Southern cookery. It is unapologetically Black space that is on display. For many people that read the news and or hear negative connotations about Chicago, there's a lot of sensationalism around what Chicago's South Side and West Sides are doing on their spare time. And we combat that by creating space that allows people to enter in and see a high level of decency, a high level of integrity, and a high level of kindness. We don't forbid anyone from coming in, we take care of everybody. And the last part of what we do is a high level of delicious. Thank you.
Can you tell everyone why you named it Virtue?
I named it Virtue because I was looking for a word at the time that spoke to my experience as a cook and that spoke to my experience in life. Virtue, by its very definition, is of high moral standard. Virtues that many of you will recognize. One of them happens to be patience, because we all quote the cliche, right, that patience is a virtue. And when you have a dining room full of angry customers, you learn quickly that patience really is a virtue. Kindness is a virtue. Hospitality is a virtue. Courage is a virtue. Those are things that we all have on display every single shift, and things that we develop and encourage throughout our shift amongst our team members. Virtue, the term, is very special to me because I come from modest beginnings, and my family didn't have diamonds or tranches of real estate to leave me. What they left me is a legacy of faith, just a strong belief in a better path, a more integral space. And so we're able to share that with people and allow people to enter into that space in a way that feels warm and in a way that feels welcoming. As a young kid, my grandmother was one of those grandmothers that believed in spoiling the hell out of her kids or her grandkids. And so I quickly learned that the gifts that my grandmother was imparting to us or the gift that she imparted was hospitality. And that hospitality meant that she spent time with every single family member, and it was your time. And so we imagined this space where people would come in and feel like they were being heard, feel like they were being valued, and it wasn't because they bought the biggest bottle of wine or because they wanted to see the chef or speak to the chef. I think that it's important in our world that people are heard, and that for the amount of time that we spend working to afford ourselves the luxuries in life, food being one of them, in restaurants, we should be treated with value, and we should be treated with appreciation.
One of the other things that always strikes me when I go into your restaurant is how important art is in the space. You have some beautiful artwork in the restaurant, and it's all very thoughtfully added, and it's in communication with the art world. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So I've been cooking a little shy of 30 years, which places me as a little past my prime as a chef, especially as a cooking chef. And so part of my experience is I worked at a restaurant for many years where art was part of the aesthetic. And as a result, I got a chance to cook for and entertain many artists. And, you know, as an inner city kid, I had this abundance of access to African American artists. And so I kind of imagined, you know, at some point I'd have my own restaurant and, you know, I would have, you know, Black art on display. And I thought that would be like a really cool thing, but it still felt very much like a dream. And I went to a show that was opening in Chicago that was featuring a very, very famous African-American artist by the name of Kerry James Marshall. And it was a retrospective of 40 years of his painting. Kerry has had some breakout years over the past couple of years, but he's been probably one of the most important painters of our time for easily the last 20 or 30 years, before he was a household name. And so I took one of my sous chefs, because I was trying to introduce him to art at the time, to see this show that I had saw at least once and wanted to go back a couple more times to really absorb it. And I missed the video. And in this video, Kerry talked about mastery, and that was the name of his show. And he talked about the standard. And part of his conversation was, as a young Black artist, there were no figures for him to paint that looked like him. So if you went into painting, you had to paint, you know, you had to mimic the style of Picasso and many of the painters that we all celebrate and or recognize. And so he set out to paint those muses so well that he would be afforded the opportunity to change the game. And so now he eloquently talks about how many shades of Black he paints in. I only thought there was one shade of Black. I had no idea that there's multiple shades of true Black. And my father taught me at a very young age about the standard as well. And so there were parallels there. And as a lot of young people, and we see this a lot in kitchens, young cooks, young professionals want to get in the kitchen. They want to take all the ingredients, put them all in one dish, and hope like hell it tastes delicious, you know? And one ingredient is usually always there, bacon, because bacon makes everything taste good. And what my dad talked to me about is this idea that in music, you're always taught the standard first. And then you learn improvisation. And the reason that improvisation is so unique is because there are many people that are experts in their craft that really understand the standard backward and forward, and then they can ad-lib and play off of each other. And so with those two things, we set out to open a restaurant, and I was so moved by this idea that this artist started, you know, what we would call far left and then went far right, right? Polar opposites. That I felt like we had an opportunity to put that on display, not just on the plate, but also on the walls. I would add, our walls are all white, and the term is called landlord white because many of the apartments that young people rent happen to be white. It's eggshell. It's also the same color that shows up in museums, but it was very specific to me because I opened a restaurant on Chicago South Side in a space where For many years, the city was redlined, so I wouldn't have been able to own a restaurant in that area. So I intentionally painted the walls white in the hopes that we would get art to put on the walls to kind of have a double meaning. Both that I had arrived to a space where I could own art and hang it on the walls, but also to pay homage to the many operators and owners that may not have been in a space of ownership because they had to lease because our city was redlined.
Wow. We're running really short on time, so.
It's fine. I'm just about done.
Okay.
So, at this point, I would take the ingredients that have been simmering in the pot. I would fill this blender, being careful not to fill this blender more than halfway. It's probably the most important instruction, and it is the one instruction that I follow. Because if you ever want to see an awful explosion, add more food than you need to a blender when it's hot. And Lord knows I have seen my fair share of awful explosions. Because these lovely elves in the background have already filled the cup with soup, then I can take soup that's already in the proper form. I can turn the blender down, turn it on, it's an amazing blender. You see how fast it blends? And then we add a little bit of coconut milk after we puree. Not coconut cream, this is just the top of the coconut milk. I don't know what coconut cream is. I don't endorse them. I think it's weird. We blend that. I promise that if you were a little spicier in life, I would tell you how to get the soup spicier. If you seeded your jalapenos and you elected, blend that a little bit more, and you elected to find out that the jalapenos aren't spicy sometimes when they don't have seeds. We add a pinch of cayenne pepper, because cayenne is just good for the soul. And it disappears in white soup, which is really great. Chandra's like, there's no way he's going to pull this off in time.
I never underestimate.
So we pour the soup in the bowl. We garnish it with a little bit of coconut. This is just shredded coconut that we've toasted. We garnish it with a little bit of cracked pecans. My personal preference is Georgia pecans because I'm a Southern boy at heart. And then every now and then somebody gets really fancy on my line and they add a little bit of parsley. And then there you have it. It's really that simple. Thank you.
Well, I love that soup so much at lunch today that I think I had 2 of the tasting portions and then went back with a full cup and said, just, I need a bowl of soup right now. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your soup and your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
You guys are such a great crowd.
So I'm very excited to invite another Chicago chef to the stage. Ryan Brosseau is the executive chef and partner at Dear Margaret, where he brings a passion for preservation and pickling, whole animal butchery, and bread baking. This is a very new restaurant, so the fact that you are still running your restaurant and you're here says wonderful things about how everything is going, but I'm just especially excited for all of us to hear more about what he does. Ryan's menu pays homage to his French-Canadian grandmother, Margaret, for whom the restaurant is named, and his upbringing in Canada, which means that every time someone says, "Oh, Chicago, that's really cold," Ryan can be like, it's fine. I love this part. He calls himself an old-fashioned cooking dude who believes food culture is crucial to understanding who we are. His restaurant, his food is wonderful. I've actually only had it takeout so far because of the nature of timing, but I'm excited. It's in my neighborhood, so I'm excited to get in there live and in person. But in the meantime, please join me in welcoming Ryan to the stage.
Hi, everybody. This is my first time in California. This is the farthest west I've ever been in my whole life. It's scary. I'm coming from a tiny little town in Ontario, 350 whole people. So this is a big deal for me. This dish we're doing today is roasted and then fried delicata squash with the chestnut puree and some pickled peppers and a little bit of mustard greens. This is actually, while thinking about this, standing over in the corner, just about everything that my grandmother Margaret and her husband Edmund would have made me do in the fall. My grandfather would take me to his little patch of forest and make me pick chestnuts with him every fall. And I was like 8, so I had no idea what was going on, but I hated it. And then he was a farmer under contract from Green Giant, so he would grow all kinds of squashes and beans and things, and then a giant garden in the backyard. And my grandmother would preserve beans and pickle peppers for us. She did some banana peppers once and once only because her hands broke out because they were so spicy. She refused to do it ever again. So basically, this is a real simple dish. We're gonna split a squash long ways, scoop out some seeds, with our handy dandy spoon, and then we're gonna oil and salt this, and we're gonna slide it into a pretty hot oven and get it cooked until it's just soft. And unlike my compatriot, Mr. Williams, I won't be doing this in real time. He pulled that off like nobody's business. But we'll do a nice little demo here. A little bit of olive oil. What we're really looking to have happen here is we're going to get some steam happening underneath here so that this cooks thoroughly through. And then through the magic of television, we have nice roasted squash that we've cut up into tiny little pieces. What we're going to do then, I'll find a good spot for that thing, is we're going to deep fry a few pieces of this. And what that's going to do is going to get us a nice blistered skin, nice hot interior. Essentially what we're going to end up with is something like a squash French fry. Let's see how this deep fryer works here. Perfect. So we've got some pickled shishitos, real simple, slice them any way you like. I like to leave the seeds in, it looks a little bit more rustic. These aren't typically too spicy. Salt, vinegar, water, and a little sugar. Gets a real nice sharp pickle. We've got our chestnut puree, just cooked chestnuts, pureed with water, oil, and a little cayenne and a little ginger. More flavors that go really well with squash. And then we're gonna dress this with a little chili oil, just some kind of anything you'd like. We've got black peppercorns, cumin, some bird chili, I think some garlic in there. And then we were The CIA was nice enough to provide us with some mustard greens from the garden outside. And I'm game for questions too if anybody's got anything about our opening during the pandemic. We opened January 16th for takeout and delivery only, which was risky, but it worked out really well. We've managed to sort of grow the business a little bit at a time. Takeout and delivery, and then into takeout and delivery with a little patio. Finally opened our dining space in late June, early July. We had to wait forever for our chairs. Back order. And we've been BYOB since, and thankfully we've received our liquor license just the other day, actually. So we just got our first shipment of wine. That would have been 2 days ago. I got notified when we landed in the plane. So now we've got our fried squash. Dress this with a little bit of salt. Set that aside. Got our nice chestnut puree. These purees are always the glue that holds everything together, right? And then we're gonna put our squash in our bowl. Little pickled chilies. Olive oil. Some nice lemon juice. My handy dandy assistant Jeff squeezed for me the other day. I really like to try to build a plate so you have to dig through it to every bite's a little bit different, right? So as we dig through the dish, we're gonna get some pickles, we're gonna get some of the mustard greens, we're gonna get down to the puree. Every bite should be a little bit different. Dress this up real nice here. Absolutely.
I was down in the lobby and I heard you say questions, and so I ran.
Yeah, dig in.
We've got a lot of culinary teachers in the audience. What are you finding is lacking in your new staff that's coming in? What do they need to know?
Honestly, I think I've had a really good luck finding staff. I have a really small space and I have a really small team, and they're fantastic. What I've had trouble getting from people that are coming in to join that team is sort of an expectation that they're going to be an expert on the first day.
Yeah.
That really seems to be a thing that is sort of happened with us as an industry as a whole. I would really like to see chefs like Mr. Williams and one of the previous presenters that we saw. They're all about teaching new staff and getting them where they want to go, whether it's don't fill the blender too full, which is definitely a thing I've seen 1,000 times, or have the patience to learn the craft. You can't walk in and be the expert you think you are on the first day. I know coming from a little tiny town of 350 people, it was hard to find good restaurants that weren't just opening bags and microwaving things. So when I finally made it to Chicago, my first day at a Chicago restaurant, I was like, oh God, what did I just do to myself? So it was a big deal, and I had to decide to either buckle down and learn from everybody around me, whether it was what to do or what not to do, or pack it up and go home. Thankfully, I decided I was going to take the time to learn. But that's really what I think a lot of our industry is going to keep it alive, right? Let's keep teaching everybody. Let's take every opportunity to show anything we can to new cooks, new servers, new sommeliers, anybody that wants to stay in this industry. We have to show everybody what to do, to teach.
Can you tell us a bit about the menu at your restaurant?
Yeah, we try to use everything seasonally. That's a little bit of a trope at this point. But I think for me, it keeps me on my toes. Earlier this year, we ran out of tomatoes. Farm didn't have them anymore. Had to change the menu overnight. And I try to limit myself to what we can get from our local farm vendors and local meat purveyors. I think it's challenging. I think it keeps the menu fresh. I think it keeps our guests engaged. We're a tiny space, and so we've already managed to get a lot of regulars in our little Lakeview neighborhood. And they're excited to see what we're doing next, and I think they find it fun. You know, every once in a while we'll get somebody say, "Oh, you took that thing I love off the menu," but then we set something new down in front of them, and then they're going to be disappointed next time we change the menu. But that's it's all about that sort of thing. There's a lot of influence from my grandmother, you know, with different ingredients. Sometimes I probably don't realize I'm doing it. But also, I went to university, that's what we call it back in Canada, in Windsor, Ontario, and there's a really diverse population there. A lot of Middle Eastern people, a lot of Indian people, a lot of different Asian cultures. And just exposing myself to all that stuff, I find I'm reaching for an ingredient that I discovered, you know, in some random little grocery store over and over and over again. So you'll find sort of Midwestern / French Canadian things with a little touch here and a little touch there that maybe you wouldn't expect. Really love cardamom, so we've got cardamom and maple brined pork chops on the menu right now. Maybe not something that you might think to do, but it works really well.
Now, it sounds delicious in that the squash looks fantastic. This is something on your menu right now?
No.
Why
this
not?
was a
Did I mention I live nearby? Why not?
we had a delicata squash dish on the menu, which was sort of the inspiration for this. This is a variation of something I've done in the past, but delicata season is all over in Chicago. So on our toes, we've got curry squash on for the time being, and then when that's done, we'll move on to probably pie pumpkins or acorn squash or something else. I really like to follow the squash season, and we just sort of rotate them in and out as they become available. It's a really fun ingredient. Kind of make it taste any way you want.
Well, I think what you're talking about doing, following the seasons, you know, kind of evolving, even, you know, pivoting as quickly as you need to deal with what's at the market, and to own and operate your own restaurant in a city where, you know, a dining focused city where people want to experience that food. I'm sure it doesn't feel like this 99% of the time, but it sounds like what every young cook, every chef dreams of doing. And as a Chicagoan, I'm so grateful that you are doing it. So thank you so much for what you've done and for coming out here to share this with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Chandra also for guiding us through her hometown in Chicago. Well, not quite hometown, the town she calls home, I suppose, in Chicago. A big round of applause for Chandra also. We made it. We are at the end of the biggest and longest Worlds of Flavor Day, full of food, full of breakouts, full of culinary demos, and you all are ready to hit up the restaurants and wine. Well, the wineries are closed, but you're ready to hit up the wine glasses, I'm guessing, yes? Yeah, oh, yeah, everybody's like, oh. Thank you for sticking with us to the very end of the day. We are at the end of the day, but we've still got so much more tomorrow. So please don't forget to come back tomorrow. Breakfast starts at 8 a.m. outside again, and then we'll start with programming at 8:30. We've got an amazing day for you tomorrow. We're hearing from chefs from Santiago, from Baja, Mexico. We're also going to be visiting visiting Washington, D.C., and we've got another round of seminars and breakouts for you. So be sure to come back tomorrow, and we'll take it up from there. Have a good evening, everyone.
Hi, I'm Andrew Hunter, chef for Kikkoman Sales USA. Today we're going to make a tornado omelet. You'll see the technique is a little challenging, but it's a lot of fun and it'll definitely make your guests say wow. Let's get started by preparing the unagi sauce mixture. Whisk together Kikkoman unagi sauce, which is similar to sweet soy glaze, Kikkoman citrus seasoned ponzu, and toasted sesame oil, and set this aside. Now we'll prepare the rice. Let me show you how to give it a perfectly crispy texture. Spread cooked short grain rice in a thin layer on a flat top griddle with plenty of oil. The goal is to create crispy grains similar to breakfast hash browns. Scoop the crispy rice from the griddle and into a mixing bowl. Fold the unagi sauce mixture into the rice and season to taste with sesame oil. Cover the rice until you're ready to serve. Scoop the rice into a mold and place it in the center of the plate. Now I'll show you the technique to make our tornado omelet. Add oil to a 10-inch non-stick skillet over medium heat. Ladle the whisked eggs into the skillet. As the edges of the omelet begin to set, place cooking chopsticks on the edges of the omelet and slowly bring them to the center while turning the pan clockwise at the same time. Twist the chopsticks and continue turning the skillet clockwise to create a tornado shape in the center. Keep the chopsticks in place to hold the omelet's shape while turning the omelet over the mound of rice. Spoon the unagi sauce mixture around the omelet and dot with creme fraiche. Garnish the omelet with toasted Kikkoman panko, minced chives, dots of Kikkoman double fermented soy sauce, and serve. Here you have the tornado omelet. It's one of my favorite new dishes to make because the flavors of the eggs, rice, and Kikkoman sauces just go great together.
These sweet and smoky medjool dates stuffed with pistachios, garlic, and citrus are sure to be a winner with your guests. This delicious blend-forward recipe can be served as an appetizer, a shared small plate, or a past hors d'oeuvre. Let me take you through the recipe. First, we'll prepare the goat cheese, pistachio, and Knorr Ultimate Flavor citrus stuffing. Heat a sauté pan over medium-low heat. Add the oil and garlic and cook until aromatic. Add half of the pistachios and sauté for about 1 more minute. Set this aside to cool. Once the pistachios are cool, add the goat cheese, parsley, chives, mint, and Knorr Professional Intense Flavor Citrus Fresh. The Knorr Professional Intense Flavor Citrus Fresh adds a delicious, bright citrus element to the dish. Season with salt and pepper. Place this mixture in a piping bag. To prepare the dates, remove the pits by splitting open the top and removing the pit. Next, we'll stuff the dates with the goat cheese mixture and top with the remaining pistachios. Place the dates on a lightly oiled baking sheet, stuffing side up. Preheat a smoker over medium lat. Place the date in the smoker for 5 minutes or until the cheese is slightly warm with a hint of smoke. So here's our final plate. Sweet and smoky medjool dates stuffed with pistachios, garlic, and Knorr Professional Intense Flavor citrus stuffing. Enjoyment guaranteed.
Inspired by the street food hawkers of Singapore, this Southeast Asian flavored slaw features smoked ham, cilantro, shredded cabbage, black sesame seeds, and tangy mango. We'll start by making the dressing. In a small bowl, combine ginger, garlic, vinegar, soy sauce, lime juice, mirin, and sesame oil. Set this aside as we prepare our salad ingredients. In a large bowl, combine the cabbage, the red bell pepper, the serrano chili, carrot, and scallions, and toss to combine. Add enough dressing to coat, and allow the salad to sit for 10 minutes for flavors to marry. In the meanwhile, we'll prepare our ham. Heat a large skillet over medium heat. Add the olive oil and diced ham, and saute until nicely browned on all sides. Remove the ham to a paper towel-lined sheet pan and cool. To serve, add the ham, cilantro, peanuts, sesame seeds, and diced mango, and toss again. Serve garnished with more cilantro and sesame seeds. So there you have it, our Singapore-style slaw with smoked ham, cilantro, shredded cabbage, black sesame seeds, and tangy mango. Find this recipe and many more at ciaprochef.com/ham. The Culinary Institute of America at Copia, in collaboration with Butter of Europe, is pleased to bring you Baking and Pastry Excellence, a free online educational series featuring the best in world baking and pastry. Today, we'll learn the secrets behind the Model Bakery's world-famous English muffins, named one of Oprah's favorite things. These flaky English muffins get their buttery flavor from a luxurious bath of clarified butter. Let's take a lesson from owner Sarah Mitchell-Hansen and head production baker Gordon Patty.
I'm Sarah Hansen, and I own the Model Bakery in the Napa Valley. Today we're making our famous Model Bakery English muffins. One of our bakers was playing around with some leftover dough. They had some focaccia dough, and they were just making breakfast for the crew, and they made them on the stovetop, and everyone thought they were so great. They said, well, we should sell these at the bakery. Model Bakery English muffins made it on Oprah's favorite thing list in 2017 and 2018, and that was really what made them so popular.
The process for making the English muffin is pretty straightforward. It's an enriched dough in that it has olive oil, and from there it has a pre-ferment as well. English muffin ingredients are bread flour, semolina, salt, yeast, water, olive oil. A very intense mix, which means mixed to 100% completion, and proofed, bulk fermentation, and then divided, at which point it's proofed about hour to 2 hours, and then griddled. Traditionally, English muffins are done on a stovetop in a griddle and maybe finished in the oven. What we do is we make ghee from scratch, and then we griddle the English muffins in that, and that imparts an entirely another layer of flavor that I think is hard to beat. So the ghee, we start with a block of butter, 25 kilos, very big pot because it's gonna foam up. So we bring the ghee up to about 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Anywhere between 400 and 425 is just perfect. We take the fermented English muffins, lay them cornmeal side up in the ghee, and fry that first side for about 3.5 to 4.5 minutes. And we come back, flip them all over, and then fry the other side for just about the same amount of time, just a smidge longer, maybe 5 minutes. And that cooks it all the way through and also gives a really nice golden red finish on both sides.
And we've just continued producing them and perfecting that recipe over the years. It's been about 15 years now since we've been making them, and now we're on everyone's favorite thing list.
The combination between the olive oil dough, which is rich on its own, and then the cornmeal fried in the ghee, that the softness of the dough that just melts in your mouth, it's only one way to get that, and that's an English muffin.
Watch more baking and pastry videos at ciaprochef.com/butter.
Hi, I'm Tony Roberts. I'm the pastry chef at the Ritz-Carlton Chicago. Today we're celebrating the worlds of flavor with the perfect puree of Napa Valley. So we're going to start the day in Montreal for breakfast with black pepper ham and Emmental crepes with the perfect puree peach ginger blend and maple sauce. And then we're going to follow up with the butter. I'm going to switch to a whisk here. And just get the butter in and just whisk until the butter is melted in. And Emmental cheese and ham, we're going to give it a fold, give it another fold. So we're just going to pour this right over the top. And then to finish, some fresh black pepper and some chopped herbs. Today I have some chive, and there you go. A beautiful brunch or breakfast dish. Next up on our culinary journey, we're stopping in Mexico City for vegetarian cauliflower tacos with a peach ginger slaw. We are going to add our peach ginger blend. So here we have our coleslaw, everything's in. We have our peach ginger blend, it smells so good. Some white vinegar, fresh lime juice, and some toasted chopped pepitas. So we're just gonna take our plate here. I have our warm corn tortillas. I'm gonna do a little bit of the spicy mayo, a few crispy fried onions, and there you have it. Roasted cauliflower tacos with the peach ginger slaw. So we're finishing our day with some sweets in Sao Paulo. And go ahead and blend it smooth. So here we have our brigadeiro mixture. And then from here, just use a little ice cream scoop, or you can use a spoon or something else. And you're just going to make little balls, pop them out, and then in your hands, roll them nicely into a little ball. And here I have some yellow nonpareil sprinkles and some orange to celebrate the peach ginger colors. And we're just going to take our little ball, roll it in here, cover it in the sprinkles. And then these just get placed in bonbon cups, ready for your guests. I've had so much fun on this culinary journey with the perfect puree of Napa Valley. We began our day in Montreal, where we made black pepper ham and Emmental crepes with a peach ginger sauce. Next up, we headed to Mexico City to prepare vegetarian roasted cauliflower tacos with a peach ginger slaw. Then we ended our day with sweets in Sao Paulo with peach ginger brigadeiros. Again, all of these recipes can be found at www.perfectpuree.com/WOF. While you're there, remember to check out our complimentary sample program and try all of the flavors for yourself. Enjoy!